are now listening to Changing Lives, a podcast presented by Mount Gilead Full Gospel International Ministries, hosted by co-pastor Daniel Robertson.
Hello and welcome to the Changing Lives podcast. My name is Daniel Robertson III. This week we have a special episode for you guys. Recently at one of our young adult events, I was able and blessed to be able to deliver a message titled, Keep That Same Energy. Keep That Same Energy starts to dive into with everything going on in our world, socially and economically, politically, that sometimes as Christians, we can get a little too pulled in to be on the natural side. And so it really dives into how us as Christians, we have to be mindful that there are not only natural and physical agendas, but that there's spiritual agendas that we should be aware of. And so Keep That Same Energy just dives into, all of the passion, all of the different things that we see, and as people, not just young adults, that we get into, how much more should we be aware and how much more should we really tap in spiritually into those spiritual agendas and putting our energy in that place instead of just in the natural. So enjoy, and I hope you're blessed by it.
That's right. But it's the issue. How many of y'all remember Drake's Back to Back? All right, so for those who don't know what that is, y'all saved. So how many of y'all know Meek Mill? All right. Jesus. All right, well, I'm gonna have to just go with it. So, Drake, everyone should know Drake. Drake from Toronto, OVO Drake. Meek Mill was mad because Drake ain't post about his album or whatever, so he started saying stuff on Twitter or whatnot. And then, Drake, who's the singing rapper, someone that we don't really expect for a diss track to come from. One of the main lines that he said is that trigger fingers turn to Twitter fingers. And God kind of showed me this thing is that we have become keyboard warriors, whether it's on, it may not be on necessarily Twitter, some of us it may be, but on Instagram or whatever else, we got all this passion for what we think and all of this passion. But when it comes down to it, with the trigger finger, meaning that at one point you was in the streets, at one point you was really in the trenches, but now it's just you just saying stuff and it's not really doing anything. It's just noise. That has become a lot of us, and it's not right. And it's not so much right now getting into what's right, what's wrong. It's more so. The first thing I want you to get tonight is we need to keep that same energy, that same level of passion, that same level of being angry towards the enemy for everything that he's doing. And I'm going to show you guys in certain ways because sometimes, we're working on some things internally, but we do a lot as a church that, even our own people don't really know about. That I believe that if more of us got involved with it, we could do so much more. If we really care about people the way that, this past weekend makes me think that we do, we have all the resources. There's a lot of churches that don't have the spiritual and financial backing that we do. There's places that want to do stuff and can't do it, and there's places that got the money but won't do it, but we have both, and we can do so much more. And I'll break some of those things down if we take that same passion and get out here and get to work. All right, so the next portion I'm going to do is, 2 Timothy 4 talks about just warning, and this is going to be a bulk of everything. This is where you're really going to want to take notes and try your best to receive what's being said. So there's sin versus a lifestyle of sin. So this is one of the first things that God kind of broke down to me that we need to get straight. There are those of us who have come to Christ, and we slip up here and there, and we're trying to push and do the right things. And then there are those of us who live a lifestyle of sin, meaning that there's no, whether it's, lying, cheating, stealing, sexual immorality, whatever it is, there's lifestyles that we're living. And it's not right before God. And there's a difference between someone who, because God works with us. And there's a certain element of like, I'm really pushing to do the right things and I slip up and God forgives me. But then there's another thing where it's just like, you've gotten into this thing where it's just a lifestyle for you. And you've convinced yourself it's not really that bad. And so I want to point that out as we go into this next part. So repeat after me, love is an action, not just words. All right, so the next thing I would say to you tonight is stop telling yourself and everybody else that you love God when it isn't true. So in short, stop lying to yourself and stop lying to everybody else when you say you love God. And 1 John, as a reference, 1 John 3:18 says, "Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth." So it's not just me saying this. This is scripture. I'm going to give you scripture references. And then John 14:15, it reads that he who loves, Jesus was talking to, I forgot who he was talking to, but he was saying, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. So what action needs to be shown to God to prove your love for him? Keeping his commandments. So next time we talk about we love God, next time we sing in a song, God, I love you, and all this other type of stuff, do you really? Within yourself, there's no judgment, but the way that you love God is through your actions. Again, 1 John 3:18, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. And then he who loves God will keep his commandments, John 14:15. So before we get into anything else, we need to make sure that we really love God. And so some of us, God is no judgment, there's love. God, he wants to transform you, but you got to be honest with yourself. And so for some of us tonight, we need to get that straight. Now, that leads me into this next point, which is that in these times, the spiritually weak will be easily deceived. The spiritually weak will be easily deceived. Proverbs 14:12 reads that there's a way that appears, or in some versions it said seems to be right, but in the end it leads to death. And I use an example. I taught the youth on Wednesday, my teenagers, and I said, it was almost like years ago when I had me and my squad versus my brother and his squad in basketball. It was back in 2012. How many of y'all remember that or was there? Okay, so my team won, but when you pulled up to the gym, David had got these AAU guys, some guys he knew from high school. It was supposed to be people that go here, but he went and recruited. You had guys that was dunking in warm-ups, doing layups. Then you got me, and I'm not gonna call any names, but we was just looking real hit in warm-ups, like, bro, they about to run y'all off the court. So it seemed like they was gonna win, but that's not what happened. And so Proverbs 14:12, there's a way that appears, seems to be right, but in the end it leads to death. And so that's tricky. Turn to 2 Timothy 3:4, and we'll kind of go through this. 2 Timothy chapter 3, and I think that it's important for us that are a part of this to really understand what's going on and to identify ourselves within it as well. And it says, "But understand this, that in the last days will come, set in perilous times of great stress and trouble." In other words, hard to deal with and hard to bear. I'm in the Amplified. For people will be lovers of self and self-centered, lovers of money, and aroused by an inordinate, greedy desire for wealth, proud and arrogant and contemptuous boasters. They will be abusive, blasphemous, scoffing, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, and profane. And then it goes on, it's not finished. Then they will be without natural human affection, callous and inhumane, relentless, admitting of no truth or appeasement. They will be slanderers, false accusers, troublemakers, intemperate, and loose in morals and conduct, uncontrolled and fierce haters of good. They will be treacherous, betrayers, rash and inflated with self-conceit. They will be lovers of sensual pleasures and vain amusements more and rather than lovers of God, which we just hit. For although, and I'll go to the King James for verse number 5 because we're familiar with this, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. In other words, denying and rejecting and are strangers to the power. And it says, avoid all such people and turn away from them. From among them there are those who worm their way into houses and captivate silly and weak-natured and spiritually dwarfed women, loaded down with the burden of their sins and easily swayed and led by various evil desires and seductive impulses. These weak women will listen to anybody who will teach them. They are forever inquiring and getting information, but they are never able to arrive at a recognition and knowledge of the truth. Just as James and Jambres were hostile and resisted Moses, so these men are hostile to and oppose the truth. They have depraved and distorted minds and are counterfeiting to be rejected as far as faith is concerned. Verse number 9, but they will not get very far, for their rash folly will become obvious to everybody, as was of those as the magicians that were mentioned. Now you have closely observed and diligently followed my teaching, conduct, purpose in life, faith, patience, love, steadfastness, persecutions, suffering. And he went on to talk about where that happened at. And then it says, indeed, and I'll go to the King James for this. And it says that all who will live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. It just comes with it. If you're going to live godly in Christ Jesus, you will suffer persecution. And then it says, but wicked men and impostors will go on from bad to worse, deceiving and leading astray others and being deceived and led astray themselves. But as for you, continue to hold the things that you have learned and of which you are convinced, knowing from who you have learned them. That's all Bible. That's not me saying anything. And so it's speaking to everything or the environment or the climate that we're in. It's telling you what's going to happen. And I don't know about you, but I'm seeing a lot of what's happening. And then it goes on to say, for those of you that love God, love and as an action, there's going to be persecution. You're going to be persecuted. It just comes along with it. You're not going to be able to go along with everything or be a part of everything. You're going to be persecuted. It comes with the territory. And so 2 Timothy 3, that's something that you definitely need to go over and go and understand. And so there's another passage of scripture. Go to Hebrews 5. Hebrews 5. Verse 10. And the next point is this. Overall, and when I say we, I mean as we as in a group, you can identify yourself. We are dull and sluggish and therefore unable to distinguish what is morally good and what is evil. I'll say it again. We are dull and sluggish and therefore unable to distinguish what is morally good and what is evil. And I'll read the scripture. Being designated and recognized and saluted by God as high priest after the order with the rank of Melchizedek. Concerning this, which we have much to say, which is hard to explain, since you have become dull in your spiritual hearing and sluggish, even slothful in achieving spiritual insight. For even by this time, you ought to be teaching others. You actually need someone to teach you over again the very first principles of God's word. You have come to need milk, not solid food. For everyone that continues to feed on milk is obviously inexperienced and unskilled in the doctrine of righteousness. Watch this, of conformity to the divine will in purpose, thought, and action. For he is a mere infant, not able to talk yet. Meaning that you have no say. But solid food is for grown men, for those whose senses and mental faculties are trained by practice to discriminate and distinguish what is morally good and noble, what is evil and contrary either to divine or human law. To discriminate and distinguish between what is morally good and noble and what is evil and contrary either to divine or human law. And I have you go to one more scripture, and then the other ones I'll reference, because this next part, I'm going to kind of step out here a little bit. So 1 John 4. It's not easy, but we got to receive this. I'm going to be in the Amplified again. 1 John 4, and I'm going to start at verse 1. And it says, "Beloved, do not put faith in every spirit, but test the spirits to discover whether they proceed from God, for many false prophets have gone forth into the world. By this you know, perceive, and recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit which acknowledges and confesses the fact that Jesus the Messiah actually has become man in the flesh is of God, has God for its source. And every spirit which does not acknowledge and confess that Jesus Christ has come in the flesh, but would annul, destroy, sever, disunite him, is not of God, and God does not proceed from him. And this is not the spirit, and this is the spirit of the Antichrist, of which you heard that it was coming, and now it is already in the world. Little children, you are of God. You belong to him and have already defeated and overcome them, the agents of the Antichrist, because he who lives in you is greater, mightier than he who was in the world. They proceed from the world and are of the world, and therefore it is out of the world. Its whole economy morally considered that they speak and the world listens and pays attention to them. And this is the key right here. We are children of God. Whoever is learning to know God, progressively to perceive, recognize, and understand God by observation and experience, and to get an ever clearer knowledge of him, listens to us. And he who is not of God does not listen or pay attention to us. And here it is. By this we know or recognize the spirit of truth and by the spirit of error. And I'll read verse 1 again in the King James. "Beloved, believe not in every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God." And so, in other words, and some versions will say, try the spirit by the spirit. And so I'm standing before you guys tonight, and before I get into this next part, try the spirit by the spirit. I'm going to say some things, and I'm going to step out here, and some of you are going to agree with me, and some of you are not going to agree with me. It is what it is. And if you try the spirit by the spirit, and I be a false prophet, then so be it. Then so be it. And so this is the type of attitude that I have, because it says, right, try the spirit by the spirit. And to even be in a position where you can try the spirit by the spirit of God has to be alive and well within you. So when we go back to our lifestyles and really how we moving and what we're doing, get that straight first, and then try it. And I'm not gonna be up here and try to vouch for myself. If I be a false prophet, then so be it. Psalms 139:13 says, "You formed me and knit me together in my mother's womb." Proverbs 6:16 through 19. And these are things that God hates. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood. Bishop preached about that on Sunday. God hates that. A heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and then a person who stirs up conflict in the community. And so dealing with all of this stuff over the past weekend, extreme situations aside, and there are certain conversations that we can have aside from this, dealing medically and other things like that. And I want to preface this because we're going to go into a place to where I want us to locate who we really are. And I'm going to expose the trick of the enemy to want to divide us and put us in these categories with a bunch of stuff that we kind of agree with, but there's a bunch of mess attached to it. So extreme situations aside, this is life and death. And this issue with human rights and the support and supporting people, supporting babies and human rights and women's rights, solving it by abortion is not of God. And I said, try the spirit by the spirit, and if I be a false prophet, then so be it. Period. Now, does that mean that all the policies that are typical in the pro-life movement are correct? No. Does that mean all the agendas that are on that side are correct? Absolutely not. But it's the trick of the enemy to put ourselves or anybody else, which I saw a lot of, we want to put people and ourselves in these buckets with various agendas. And these agendas are man-made agendas. There are things that we may be pushing for this and not really realize that this is behind it or that's behind it. And so the next scripture that I want to really break down is Ephesians 6:12. And we must be careful of who we align ourselves with. Meaning we better be careful about who we're in the bucket with. And I don't care which side of the argument you want. Be careful about who you're rubbing shoulders with. We must be careful who we align ourselves with. Ephesians 6:12 says, but our struggle is not against flesh and blood, contending only with physical opponents, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world forces of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of wickedness in heavenly supernatural places. Everything that we've been seeing, people that's in the flesh, people that's just just regular people, everybody's arguing, everybody's saying this or that. As people of God, we have to understand that this is spiritual. And we must go in the spirit realm to see what's going on. And really, to me, it doesn't matter. It's just a popular thing this weekend based on the ruling. The law is going to flip-flop. The law is going to change. People are going to do what they're going to do. But it's important that we understand what's really going on. And so to understand the spirit, to get into that flow, we got to understand that this thing is not just what we see. It's not just what we see on social media. It's not whatever news or whatever comes out, that this is spiritual. And for those, no matter which side of the thing that you're on, a lot of what I saw, there's a scripture for this as well. I'm cutting everybody tonight. Proverbs 15:18, it says, don't stir up contention. And I'll read the verse like this. A hot-tempered man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger and patient calms disputes. In other words, we don't need to be stirring up stuff, no matter what your conviction is. AKA subtweeting, subposting, and just trying to, provoke people and say different things. It's not of God. That's not how he wants us to handle things. All right, let me encourage you a little bit. All right, the answer is Jesus. It's not any political party or group. Remember that when we get back around to election time, we're going to see a lot of the same stuff, a lot of the same issues. People are going to be trying to justify this side, justify this side. I want you to remember, and I'm not saying don't be politically involved, but there's a lot of fine print. There's a lot of small things that get very technical when it comes down to this. I'm not getting into that, but I'm saying that the answer is Jesus. And so the law will change. People are going to do what they're going to do. But if this is really about people, I encourage you guys, we must step forward in ministry. We must step forward into ministry, because no matter where you're coming from, I feel that even if you're being deceived, because somebody's being deceived, because I got people on both sides. One side is wrong, one side is right, according to God. And so no matter which side of the coin that you're on, I do believe that we care about people and the well-being of people. And so these are some of the things that we have set up right now. And I want to put this disclaimer here. There has not been much that has come across Bishop's desk that someone has come and has an idea for, we can do this and be a blessing to these people, or we can support this group, or we can do this, that he's turned down. There's not much that he won't look at when it comes to that. So some of the things that we do, we got the farm. And I don't think we really recognize how much it costs to run a farm. It takes a lot of time, a lot of money to run what we do, where we're literally growing our food and providing it to the community. And so these are some of the answers, some of the questions to where it's like, okay, if we're going to force this to happen, or we're going to do this, or whatever the law does, we have to support our communities as the church. You know, the government going to do what it's going to do. It's going to be policies, it's going to be all this type of stuff. But as the church, we can get started right now. So we got the farm. We have a ministry for pregnant teens and young moms. We have TWI houses that people and families are able to stay in for an extended period of time to get back on their feet. How much more of that could we do if, and I'm talking about beyond dancing, beyond singing, beyond just coming and doing what we do on Sunday morning, how much more could we do if we say, yo, like, if this is what we really care about, Bishop, can we build this and we can house 10 families here? We can do X, Y, Z. How much more could we do if we step up to the plate with the things that, and it's not just fresh ideas, it's things that God has placed in our spirits. So he's placing these things on our hearts to where we care about women. I really believe that it's genuine care about, what are we going to do when someone can't support a child that they have? And so if God has placed that on your heart, I'm saying let's not just tweet about it. Let's put some action behind it. So those are just some of the things that we do here that we really got to have younger faces with. Back years and years ago, there might have been people 30, 40 years old that might have set this stuff up. They may be in their 50s and 60s now. It's time for us to take the reins. There's things that we might do it a little bit differently, more effectively, to be able to really reach the communities that we serve. And so this is why ministry exists, loving and supporting people. Our assignment is so great, and how much more can we be an answer to the needs in this community if we step forward even more? Again, we have the spiritual, and y'all don't even understand. I said in a board meeting the other day, the spiritual and financial backing that we have to really go forward and do some stuff. If we only knew, like Bishop will say certain things from the pulpit, but there's a lot of things that he doesn't say that we're doing for this person, boom, being a blessing to that person. There's millions of dollars that are put into the community every single year and overseas. Millions. And so if we step up and we say we can do this a little bit more effectively, we got ideas. I just want you guys to know that we're, and Bishop says all the time, we're blessed to be a blessing. So I just want to put that out there. It's like we're at a, if God has you here, it's for a purpose, because the thing that he may be putting in your spirit to do, we can go forward and really do it. So I want you to recognize who you are connected to, and you can go here with me, and I'm going to close out with this, because one issue with it is, I've heard a lot of, well, I don't feel connected, and I don't really feel a part, and this ministry really flows off of connection. And I think first it takes an understanding. So hopefully we got some of that tonight. But I think every young person needs to have this passage in their heart. You can memorize this. It's 6 verses in Psalms 1. And it says, "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly." And Demarcus, you can begin playing, because I'm going to go straight into prayer from this. "Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of the scornful." And Copass actually has a podcast coming out based on verse 1 on probably Tuesday, so make sure you really look into that as well. "But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law does he meditate day and night." And this is the key as far as when I talk about connection. "And he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bring forth fruit in his season. His leaf shall not wither, and whatsoever he does shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away." Meaning that there is no being planted. When the wind blows, they disappear. "Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteousness. For the Lord knows the way of righteousness, but the way of the ungodly shall perish." And so we have to get planted. If God calls you to be here, let's put them roots down. Let's put those roots down Let's have them dig deep. I don't know if you ever seen like a river or a lake and there's trees by it, and sometimes when the tide goes back, you get to see the roots that are exposed. Being beside a body of water, that tree can reach into the water and have a never-ending supply. And so we have to get planted. Some of us, there are things that are just not happening like it should. We're not seeing the fruit like we really want to see it. And we kind of come to church, we may kind of serve on helps ministry, but I learned here recently that that's not enough. It's like, where's your heart at? We really got to get plugged in and connected. You know, I won't even say it, but I'm like, if God has called you to be here and you don't even know what the prophetic word is for this church, for this year, are you planning? Are you planning? You know, it's we put it up on a banner, Bishop is pushing it, and sometimes we're so in the mode of, you know, come say what's up, well, whatever, but are we really planning? Because if we're going to really go forward in ministry, you think the devil's just going to sit back and allow us to do that? And so there's a strength that we need, and we're going to get into prayer for some of this tonight. Mike, you can.
This has been another episode of Changing Lives. Be sure to subscribe to stay updated on new episodes. Also, find us on the web at mountgileadfgim.org and follow us on Instagram at mountgileadfgim.